Hello everyone and welcome. In today's lesson, we will learn how to describe sequences of past events. That's why we need to use the past perfect tense. We will see also how can we use with this tense the two words here, ever and never. Let's start. We will see the past perfect in comparison with the past simple. When can we use the past simple and when can we use the past perfect? The past simple describes the event that is closest to the time of speaking, whereas the past perfect describes an event further back in the past, which means we have two past events. One of them happened before the other. For the first event, we use the past perfect, and for the second event in time, اللي هو باش يكون of course close to the present time, the past simple. Let's see the first example here. The train had left before we arrived at the station. We have two events. The train had left, then we arrived at the station. The first action happened at 8:10 p.m., whereas the second action happened at 8:20 p.m., which means the first action happened the first in time. Here the train had left. That's why here we need to use the past perfect for the first action in time. And the second action, the past simple. Let's see here more examples. I knocked on Pablo's door, but he had already gone to work. You see here the first action that we find in the sentence here, I knocked on Pablo's door. That doesn't mean that this action happened first in time. No. يعني نجم نبداو بالعكس، نجم نبداو بالاكشن اللي صارت الثانية مش الأولى. Okay? كما هنا I knocked on Pablo's door. The first action that happened in time is that he had already gone to work. He had already gone to work at 7 a.m. but I knocked on his door at 7:30 a.m. The traffic was bad because the car had broken down on the road. The first part here, the traffic was bad. The traffic was bad is the consequence or the result of the action that happened before. اللي هي a car had broken down on the road. How to form the past perfect? We use had followed by the past participle to form the past perfect. The train here is the subject. We need had with all subjects. So it doesn't matter if you have he, she, we, I. We always find had because it is the past of the verb to have. Plus the past participle of the verb. Here, the past participle of the verb to leave, هي left. Because the past participle describes the action in the past. Plus, of course, the rest of the sentence. Here we have before we arrived at the station. Let's do this exercise here. We will match the beginnings of the sentences to the correct endings. The first one is made for us. When we arrived at the stadium, the game had already started. ديما we have two actions يا جماعة. One of them happened before the other. Okay? So, what happened before the other? We use the past perfect. And for the other action, we use the simple past. Number one, a tree had fallen on the road. A tree had fallen on the road. So I couldn't drive to work. So I couldn't drive to work. Number two, I offered Logan some pasta. I offered Logan some pasta, but he had already eaten lunch. But he had already eaten lunch. Number three, I hadn't seen Emma for years. I hadn't seen Emma for years, but I recognized her immediately. But I recognized her immediately. Number four, we felt absolutely exhausted. we felt absolutely exhausted after we had run the marathon. After we had run the marathon. Number 5. She couldn't catch the train. She couldn't catch the train because she had left her ticket at home. Because she had left her ticket at home. Let's see another exercise. We will fill in the gaps by putting the verbs in the past perfect or past simple. We had spent 14 days in Vietnam and we were sorry to leave. Number 1. Although we meet only a few times, I know we would get along. Although we had met only a few times, I knew we would get along. Number 2. She arrived late at work because she missed the bus. She arrived late at work because she had missed the bus. Number 3. The sun rise and it be time to start work in the fields. The sun had risen and it was time to start work in the fields. Number 4. Joe be delighted because his parents buy the perfect birthday present. Joe was delighted because his parents had bought the perfect birthday present. Had bought. Number 5. Henry cooked dinner when Sally get back from work. Henry had cooked dinner when Sally got back from work. Very good. Let's see another one. Say the sentences out loud, filling in the gaps by putting the verbs in the past perfect or past simple. We had viewed the house before he took his wife to see it. Number 1. She read a review of the book before she buy it. She had read a review of the book before she bought it. Number 2. After he finished watching the movie, he go to bed. After he had finished watching the movie, he went to bed. Number 3. I asked Katie for a ride to work because I miss my train. I asked Katie for a ride to work because I had missed my train. Number 4. He studied very hard because he take his exams. He had studied very hard before he took his exams. Number 5. Andy only resign once he find a new job. Andy only resigned once he had found a new job. Had found. Number 6. They discuss all the options before they make a decision. They had discussed all the options before they made a decision. Let's see the two words here, never and ever. How can we use them with this tense, the past perfect? we use the past perfect with never or ever to talk about events in the past that happened for the first time in your life. Okay, let's see the sentence. Leo was very excited. We have the past simple here. Leo was very excited. He had never visited Rome before. We use here the past perfect with the word never. Never means here this had not happened before. It sits between had and the past participle. So between the auxiliary had and the past participle of the verb, and here we have visited. Let's see another example with ever. Leo was very excited. It was the first time he had ever visited Rome. We use ever here as an emphasis للتأكيد that this is the first time it had happened. So you can use both of them. You can use never and you can use ever here. Let's see this exercise. Cross out the incorrect word in each sentence. Tom had never been on a plane before this trip to Madagascar. Number 1. Last summer was the first time we had never or ever gone camping. It rained every day. Last summer was the first time we had ever gone camping. It rained every day. Number 2. I had never or ever eaten risotto until I went to Milan. Now I can cook it for myself at home. I had never eaten risotto until I went to Milan. Now I cook it for myself at home. Number 3. They had never ever been overseas before. They went to Paris. They thought the flight was exciting. They had never been overseas before. They went to Paris. They thought the flight was exciting. Number 4. We traveled overnight from Bangkok. It was the first time I had ever never slept on a train. We traveled overnight from Bangkok. It was the first time I had ever slept on a train. Number 5. I heard you went to Madrid last month. Was that the first time you had never ever been there? I heard you went to Madrid last month. Was that the first time you had ever been there? Number 6. James had never ever been bungee jumping until he tried it in New Zealand last year. James had never been bungee jumping until he tried it in New Zealand last year. Let's see how we use the present perfect with never and ever, because never and ever, we don't only use it with the past perfect. We also use it with the present perfect, and most of the time with the present perfect. We use the present perfect with never or ever to talk about events that are happening now for the first time. Not in the past for the first time, but now. Nat is very excited. She has never visited Sydney before. Nat is very excited. It is in the present simple because it is happening now. She has never visited Sydney before. We use the present perfect with the word never here, and never means that this has not happened before. It sits between has and the past participle also, the same way it happened with the past perfect. Let's see ever now. Nat is very excited. It is the first time she has ever visited Sydney. The same thing, the first part is in the present simple. Nat is very excited. It is The first time she had ever visited Sydney, we use present perfect with the word ever. And ever here emphasizes that this is the first time it has happened. Let's see an exercise here. Fill in the gaps using have in the correct tense. In the correct tense. So it is a mixture of the past perfect and the present perfect. Let's focus here. Tamal is very nervous, but also excited. He has never tried skydiving before. The first part is in the present simple, as you can see. Tamal is very nervous, so it is happening now for the first time. It is happening now. So we will use the present perfect here. He has never tried skydiving before. Number 1, I'm speechless. It's the first time I ever seen a lion in the wild. I'm speechless, which means I cannot talk anymore. I am very surprised. I am amazed. Okay? It's the first time I have ever seen a lion in the wild. It is the first time I have ever seen a lion in the wild. Number 2, Sam and Ellie don't know what to expect. They never been on a cruise. Sam and Ellie don't know what to expect. They have never been on a cruise. They have never been on a cruise. Number 3, Marisha never been skiing before. She went to the Alps. Now she loves it. Marisha had never been skiing before she went to the Alps. Now she loves it. Number 4, when I went to Berlin, it was the first time I ever been on vacation alone. When I went to Berlin, it was the first time I had ever been on vacation alone. Number 5, we never flown for longer than 4 hours until we went to Cuba. We had never flown for longer than 4 hours until we went to Cuba. Number 6, the children can't wait. It will be the first time they ever traveled by train. The children can't wait. It will be the first time they have ever traveled by train. And let's do the final exercise here. We will say the sentences out loud using ever or never. Fill in the gaps. I didn't know her before. I met her yesterday. Yesterday was the first time I had ever met her. Ben is so excited. It's his first time on a plane. Ben is so excited. He has never been on a plane before. He has never been on a plane before. Number 2, until last week, Don had never been to Iceland. Last week was the first time Don had ever been to Iceland. The first time Don had ever been to Iceland. Number 3, before I went to Japan, I hadn't eaten miso soup. I had never eaten miso soup before I went to Japan. I had never eaten miso soup before I went to Japan. Number 4, until now, Jen has never traveled alone. It's the first time Jen has ever traveled alone. It's the first time Jen has ever traveled alone. And the final sentence here, I had never gone sailing before last year. I had never gone sailing before last year. Last year was the first time I had ever gone sailing. Last year was the first time I had ever gone sailing. That's it for today. Thank you so much for your attention and see you soon. Goodbye.